the idea that I had when I was thinking what to present on web portals was to show you a fully blown web portal, exactly how it worked and what kinds of things could be developed into it. And a myriad of evil things happen at Pepperdine. And when those myriad of evil things happen at Pepperdine due to the Central University and changing over to Windows 2000, Active Directory, and whatnot, well, my big web portal project for the law school, which was going to be basically, the web internal portion of the website, got scrapped. So what I decided instead was I was going to write some code that showed you some things you can do, basic code you can do for a web portal, and then just demonstrate those features. Sort of like, this is what I would have been pointing to in a real live website. Now I'm just pointing to the kind of concepts and whatnot. Wow. There we go. People are coming.
You're Mr. Dickens.
I am Mr. Dickens.
Okay, what is this about?
This is about web portals using Microsoft software.
Thanks a lot.
You can change your mind.
It appears there's just something about me. I don't know, did I not shower today? I don't know. Anyway, I told John Mayer it's a bad idea to put me outside the Geek Fest, but he thought he knew what he was doing. And if I'll have to get to talk to him later and pull him over a small sawhorse. Anyway, welcome.
Hi.
Now you're not going to tease me and go away, are you?
Nope.
All right.
Nope. I'm going to sit and listen.
Wow. Someone's coming. All right. Now I'll stop talking about what I'm talking about and actually talk about what I'm going to show you. What I've done here is I've just written some code on this machine to serve as a web portal. The things we want to think about is when we think about a web portal, when we think what are the successful web portals, what do they do? Web portals provide certain specialized services like a way to send email. They provide some user configuration items, and they provide some way of getting information, no matter what they do, some way of getting information into and out of a database. They can do all sorts of things with a very simple process. You can run a chat room or a group sort of threaded discussion list or whatever you want, but really all you're doing is getting information into and out of a database through your website. So what I did on my own little machine here is I made a little thing I just called, oh, come on, this is not good. That's good. It'll give other people time to come in. Right? I just didn't start up my web server. I'm running SQL Server 7, but all the code works either way. The 2000 mostly adds support for clustering, and it allows you to also, it has a keyword XML that allows you to actually pull data out into an XML stream. That keyword XML and select statements, how useful that is, I don't know. The guys who I know who've used it, it just sounds like they're storing web pages as text. So why not just store the web pages as text in the database? To me, it didn't excite me. The clustering is important, though, if you are looking to have high availability. And we're not running. None of us are. Well, we're law schools. We're not medical schools. We're not running heart and lung machines. But sometimes the dean can act like that. And it is your face to the world. I mean, you want to think that your front door is always going to be open 24/7 to potential students, donors, whatever. So, in that sense, it may be worth the money to invest in the clustering stuff. If you're involved with your central university, maybe they already have a cluster set up using SQL Server 2000. All right, this should work now. Or I'm going to have to get really tested. All right. Now, all I did was threw up a bunch of links on the page and speculated that there might be more stuff up there if I wanted to. This horrible color scheme is actually something copied from the real Pepperdine School of Law homepage. I don't like these colors, but anyway, when I was originally making this, that's what I made it for. If you go to a portal, what are you expecting? Well, you're expecting digested information. Yahoo's going to give you, so to speak, everything, but FindLaw is supposed to give you law stuff. In theory, the links that I picked would have to do a lot with what Pepperdine students would be interested in having to try to convince them, particularly on the front page, try to convince them to leave this as their home page. Things would be things like the Malibu Times, since we're in Malibu, or Los Angeles Times. Probably the most visited site from our lab is ESPN's site. So I add that on there thinking if it's there and they can get it in one click, maybe they'll stay. This is a big deal with any kind of portal kind of project. If you don't give, you're not going to get back. If you're thinking, well we're going to have this cool site and we're going to gather all this information from our students and they're going to know all the announcements, because, like I mentioned up there, like maybe you have a message of the day or news items or like lab FAQs or something. You may think to yourself, wow, if the Career Services just puts in this article about a special program that's going on for second-year students, if they just put that in this database and we slap it up on the web, everyone will know about it. Well, they won't know about it if it's not their homepage. So having a lot of links on your front page is probably a good idea, and having links that they want, not the links necessarily that you're really excited about, but the links that they want. It's not too hard to find where people are going. Your central university probably tracks web usage. It's easy enough to track it yourself if you want to, where people are headed. But anyway, that's what I thought when I was building this page. One of the other things about doing a portal is you want to give customizability. Now, the way I wanted to be able to do this was to be able to include and exclude maybe certain sections, or allow people to edit individual sections to create some of their own links. Again, having the user help me out to keep them here on my page as a home page. I didn't have time to do that this morning. As I said earlier, my original project was to create a portal for Pepperdine. That entire project got axed because of some other things that came along this summer and projects that were going on. So what I've had to do is sort of kludge together something to show you what I would have done. And sort of teach you concepts and things, and show you some code, and show you how dirt simple this stuff is. You go over to the Technoids Fest and you talk to the Linux guys, and you're going to see a bunch of Perl code that's near unreadable. I think anybody can look at this stuff and make sense of what it looks like. The first thing I'm going to show you is I have 3 different little sections up here. Make it blue, make it normal, make it none. If I click on this blue, you'll get a terribly awful, even worse color scheme that sticks. If notice that my web address up there hasn't changed. If I reload this page, if I open a new web browser and go to my same page again, it still comes up blue. I can switch it back to a normal view, simply, or in the case of none, what none really means is no style sheet. All the graphics you see, the colors and stuff, I didn't do that with font tags and whatnot, or with table cells, although there is a table to organize the page. I did it all with cascading style sheets. And what the page actually does, if I go to my actual code, and we'll see if we can scare you right off the bat, what my page actually does is set a style sheet based on random information. Now, I'm going to have to pull this down because I don't see a pointer around here. Oh, I have a pointer. Ha! I knew I brought this for a good reason. All right. If you guys have worked with HTML, you may have seen a link tag before in the header of your HTML document. This is where you put a style sheet reference. If you're not familiar with style sheets, all they are is a particular way of telling the computer how to make paragraphs look by default, how to make H1s or H3s or H4s or whatever it is you want to use look by default to separate style from content. So by switching the style sheet with this funky little code here, by switching that, every time you log into the web page, I can change how the whole thing looks. I can have my entire website reference one style sheet, and if I want to change the look of my entire website, all I have to do is change the reference to that style sheet in this spot. Because if you notice, there's no fancy codes anywhere here. There's no font things, there's no tags, nothing in any of my code. They just have these little class notifiers, which refer to classes in that style sheet. So if I haven't scared you too much, I can show you how exactly that happens. Now, at the top of my web page, before anything gets started down here, I just have code. This chunk right here looks scary at first, but I can explain every piece of it very simply. It does all the thinking about who the person is that's coming to this web page and what the information I have stored in my database about them is. It's not too scary. Don't worry. Dim just means the same thing in old languages like set or whatever. You're just creating variables for things like an array, ARR, split logon, username, connection, record set, DSF. You don't need to know what these things are. They're really irrelevant. Almost all these little code snippets you can find on every ASP website in the world. How do you connect to a database? Well, you connect to a database by creating this little DSN thing, and you just put in here what your server name is and what your database on your server is and what the user ID of the database is and what the password is. If you've got someone in your building who knows how to use a SQL server, if you already got that, they can tell you what to put there. You don't have to know that. You don't have to be an expert. And then you just make a connection using that little string there. All these little funky symbols do is mean continue, 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 continue. It's a lot easier than writing it out on all one big string. Looks kind of crazy, but makes sense though if you read it. Hey, I have all these variables up here I want to use. I want to find out, I want to split my logon information. There's I don't know if you're familiar with this little request server variables feature in websites, but you can put this in your IIS website and get all sorts of information about the person who's coming to your website. It's actually kind of scary. If you've ever gone to anonymizer.com, they're one of these free proxy server places. They warn you. They say, there's all sorts of information people can get about you that you give away for free every time you log into a website. What browser you're using, the screen size of your screen, the OS that you're using, the page you came from, your own IP address, all this stuff. Well, all I'm doing is checking a logon user. Now, I said this is for Microsoft software. This is a trick. If you want to do this, if you want to make a web portal using, say, Perl and Apache and MySQL and all that sort of thing, you have to come up with your own authentication scheme. You have to come up with an extra web page that has all sorts of stuff, that checks a username and a password. When people get to the website, when they first get there, it's going to ask them, what's your username, what's your password? You have to check against that stuff and come back to this web page and do cookies and hoopla and all that garbage. Not worth it. Not if you're in a Microsoft shop, and you have to be there anyway, so you might as well enjoy the benefits of a Microsoft shop and just use something called Logon User. And all it does is it gets the information as to who's logged on the machine. If your student has sat down to their own machine and used their own login ID, they automatically send this information through any Microsoft web server. If they don't, If for some reason they're not logged in to a machine, in other words, how do I put this? Like you hit escape in Windows 95 or 98 and don't actually put a username in, it simply asks them. Microsoft's already built this sort of extra bit of authentication in for you. You don't have to do it. You just ask for the logon username. Split logon is sort of annoying. If you notice here, I have to do a little slash. The reason why I have to do a little slash, I really hate this, is because your user ID in Windows isn't, well, Dickens. It's Pepperdine / Dickens. Well, that's too much trouble. So if I split this little information they gave me, if I use split the information right where that slash is, then I just get the Dickens part. I get rid of the Pepperdine hoopla. Because I don't need to know that. All right, so anyway, for those of you not familiar with SQL, if you pick up any SQL book, yeah?
Just a question on
Sure.
Using the default Windows user thing. If, let's say they're at their home computer, and they're not hooked up via an actual network connection, will it prompt them at that point? Or
Yes. It uses what they call NT challenge response, which is a secure, depending upon what version of Internet Explorer they're using. It could be 128-bit secure or 40-bit secure. Challenge and response. If it doesn't know the username, if the username they're logged on to doesn't exist within the NT domain, or if they have none, it just asks them, "Who are you?"
Okay, and it doesn't matter if they're on
They
the
can
local
use
network or if they're
no. And in fact, I think they can even use Netscape, maybe even Opera. I think Opera also supports it now too. So I mean, it really doesn't matter what their browser is. Very simple. It looks confusing, but the most important thing to remember is this is 3 lines compared to several web pages worth of code for authentication and cookie checking and all that stuff.
But if you have a Novell network, will you connect to the server?
No, don't. You can actually if your web server is running Windows, you can actually still access those Novell accounts the same way. All you have to do is set up the NT machine to sync with those Novell accounts, so that those Novell accounts are also on the NT machine. If you can log on to your NT web server locally with a Novell account, if you can do that, this is the exact same thing, purely see-through. If you can't do it, that's not a problem. You got to set. Then you have to set up the tools that allow that to migrate. Or you can just duplicate the accounts locally. Doesn't matter. If you have 600 to 1,000 accounts, that's not really a big deal. They have tools in place in Windows. They're like, good, click on this. How many accounts do you want? Here, move them over. It's not. Most people care about it because they're concerned about people having access to a machine locally. And you have to go into Windows and actually say, don't allow them to log on locally, kind of thing, but allow them to connect over the network, and that way they can get to this stuff this way. At any rate, we set up a connection to a database, set object connection, set object record set, and we connect to a database, and then we find out all the information we can. Now, I can't explain to you SQL terminologies in like a very short time like this, but it doesn't matter because you can go get any SQL book, spend $30, and there's always a chapter on what they call Transact SQL. It's the actual select this from this, it's like this information from that table, from where this equals that, and this sort of thing. It's really easy. It's like 7 pages long usually. Huge book on all you need to know about Microsoft SQL. 1 chapter is what you really need. It's very simple to learn. Half an hour, even for someone who knows very little about databases, can do the basics of getting information into and out of a database. But anyway, we execute that little query, execute SQL query, and that's going to store in this record set all the information about a particular person. Let me show you what I mean. We get the string username from this logon user information. We select all the information, that's what a star means, from the user's table where the username equals, hey, that string username up there. So I'm getting all the information about, in this case, administrator. Because that's what I'm logged on my own laptop as, is administrator. When I come down here, to object record set username, lo and behold, you see in the top the title of my web page, administrator. You see object record set username in the title, username in my title. Pretty straightforward, not scary, not too weird. Again, we have that little style sheet reference down here that chooses different styles, and I'm going to show you how that works. Again, this is not scary. I'm going to show you this is not scary. Please ask me questions if something is scary.
Your table on the SQL side, what kind of code are you reporting for each
Well,
user?
let me show you.
Because the
my-
username is one, and
My table is my stuff is all. My database is also not scary. If you've got SQL Server right on a machine, you can move to your SQL Server there. And, in this case, the database that I'm working with is just called Portal. And there's a lot of extraneous information. Microsoft loves to give you lots of extraneous information, but really all you need is the tables. And I've got a table here called users. And I can open that table and return all the rows. And it works like this. There's the dumb thing. There's a username called Dickens, which has a style of blue.css, and he's in first class. pbowl has default.css, second class. Administrator, none.css, third class. That's all I've got in here. Now I could add any number of fields I want. I could put that they're in a certain student org, and then I could put in my web page, check to see if they're in a student org, and if they are, display this stuff. The latest news item from that student org. I could have news items in one table, users in another. Nope. Again, this is not. This is just separating things out of your mind. Now, there was a thing yesterday about how to design a database properly, and probably you do need someone who knows something about databases to set up the initial database. But you can even have your central university do that. Say, well, I need something for my user, I need something for my news stories, I need something for my student organizations, I need something, and just tell them the information you need to be able to store. They can put it on their own SQL server. You can just access it this way. So this is not, again, this is just 3 fields. It's not any big deal. And what I have here is a special page. If I go to, let me show you here. I'm doing this out of order, but I'm going to do this way anyway. All right. Down here, somewhere deep in the bowels of my web page, I have that make it blue, make it normal, make it none bit that we see here as little links. Here. Make it, oh wow, there's a long code there, blue. Make it, oh, long code again, normal, and a long code again, and none. Well, those codes are really simple. I'm just going to a web page called style.asp on my own website that's going to handle changing information in a database. This is how difficult it is to change information in a database. Oh, wow, wait a second. Isn't this what we saw before? Everything down to object connection open is just clipped. If you got that code, that's how to connect to a database. That's it. That's all there is. Once you have that, you put it in every page that you need to have access to change or to just read from a database. Okay, so you got this little chunk here. You go down here, and instead of selecting, you do update. Hey, update users, set style. Remember, style was the name of the column that had whether they were default.css or blue.css or none.css. And I just check this request query string. Request query string. Request query string. When you see on the web an address with a cute little question mark, they're passing a query string to the web page. Very simple. Not complex. Just saying a query string. To access that query string, see the query string is simply color equals blue in one case. Sorry. Helps if I click on the right thing here. My style. Request query string color. Just wants to know what the value of color is. It just so happens to be blue. I stick a little .css on the end because you remember I had to store it blue.css, normal.css, or none.css for where the username is the username again, this information about who's actually on the web page. Execute the query, and then send us back to the main page. That's what that does. It just says, hey, there's no real web data here. We don't have an HTML and all that hoopla. So we don't want the person sticking around. We want to send them back. So when I click on make it normal, it just sends me back. I never even see the page that did the changing. Again, not painful. There are some really cool features that Microsoft has recently come out with. Again, this is Microsoft House. That can annoy some people at this conference, but for the sake of people who've already got it, wouldn't it be nice if you could get your files at home? Talk about the user who dials up over their ISP, that faculty member, that dean, whatever, who wants to get access to their files. Well, if that person's logged in, they've been authenticated. When they hit this page, they either have to already be authenticated on the NT box or 95 box that they're sitting on, or it's going to ask them, as we talked about before. Either way, by the time they get to this link, get to your files, kind of hard to see, I'm sorry about that, get to your files, they're already authenticated. When I click on get to your files, my hard drive spins a little bit, and you'll see a new window open, and in that address box you'll see this funky little folder picture and a web address and file folders. I'm accessing through IIS and Internet Explorer files on my home directory. The really amazing part is this is the least scary thing in this entire presentation. This is absolutely amazing. If you've got access to a Windows 2000 server and all your people have Internet Explorer 5.0 or greater, you can do this. And that's all it is. You add a little chunk called folder. You don't have to have these be the same, but I like them to be the same. And a target, I do blank, because if you don't make the target blank, it won't open a new window. And I like to have, because if I did it the other way, it creates a real problem without it being blank. If I clicked on files right now, it would go to the files, and I would lose my website and all that sort of stuff. So I would open up a new window. I think this is pretty cool. I like the idea of being able to have access everywhere I go. I was thinking, how in the world I'm going to have to write this whole X drive thing where you can upload files by clicking on a button and browsing your hard drive and uploading them, and I have to do a directory and take the information from the directory and put it on a web page and make links to the files and all this hoopla I was worried about doing. All I do is one fancy tag. That's it. One fancy tag, and you've got access to your home directory. Now, obviously, these users have to have a home directory somewhere on the network to make this work, and the web server has to know where that directory is. I'm not sure how that would work with Novell, but if you import the accounts, I'm almost sure it would work. As long as that web server can get to the Novell services over the network, it can attach to those just like a user would attach to them sitting there in your lab or using your network from a port or anything else. It's really no different.
That's what I was thinking of.
Because this is really cool, and I really like this feature. The last of sort of like the big steps I want to show you here is just simply sending email. Now, if you don't have access to Exchange, I'm thinking Microsoft Shop here. Most people, if they have Exchange on their campus, the Central University runs it. And they're usually draconian about any access to it. At least that's been my experience when talking with people. So if you want to send email through your website, you run into some problems with your Central University usually. The easiest thing to do is to download a free utility called ASP Email at aspemail.com. It has extended features which cease to work in 30 days, but almost nobody needs those extended. It's a lot of fancy stuff that you don't need. If all you're trying to do is send email through a web page, the stuff the free stuff that's left over after the expiration is just fine. When you click on send email, well, I told you I was doing this all this morning. All it just pulls up is a simple form here, but I can go in here and I can say, well, I want to send an email to this David Dickens fellow because I was interested in his and his name is David Dickens. You don't have to include what the person's name is, but it's nice. Your presentation. Oh, good Lord. I hate that caps lock. Your presentation. Wow. Nifty stuff. Too bad I don't have a DB admin around. Okay. And hit send. This is going to take a little bit. It's going to take a little bit because the way I had to set this up, because the way they have the network here, was to go through a network server back at my home site. So we just have to wait for a second here while it does all the negotiating of protocols and whatnot. But while it's waiting, while we're waiting for that, I'm going to show you the code of the email web page. Again, ultra scary. Watch out for this. Oh my Lord! Will we check who the user is again? Because we're just addicted to checking who the user is. It takes a whole 3 lines of code. If request form, remember I said request query before, if you had a little question mark at the end of the thing? Well, request form is if you have a form on a web page and that form goes to a web page. If the request form queue is blank, then is not blank, excuse me. Send information out via email. This little mail thing is what ASP email creates when you install it. It's a special feature. If you do this in a regular ASP server, set mail server create object persists mail sender. This thing, nothing will work here. You got to have ASP mail installed on your machine. But if you have it, all this stuff works. Well, mail host, well, this is the email server it's going through. Mail from the username at pepperdine.edu. Mail from name, the username. Mail add address. Request form to request form name. Email address. Also, I just to make sure this was working, I added my postmaster address. Add reply to username at pepperdine.edu. Mail subject, request form subject, body, request form body. And then I will error checking just to make sure everything goes nice. Now, if I go check back over here, it did go through. If I check my own email real quick, I should, if everything worked right, have an email from myself, but I don't have it yet, so I'll wait for that. Down below, in the else logic, we have the web page you saw infamously before when I first clicked on email. This web page is simply the bottom half where there's really no code. Anyway, if you've ever written a form before in HTML, that's all this is. Form, method, post, action, itself. This is its own file because I got the logic in the file. It keeps it all nice and neat together. Input, name, to, type, text. Input, name, type, text. Input, name, subject, type, text. Text area, nice big text area, 50 columns, 5 rows, name, body. And input type, submit, value, send. So we got to and a corresponding input, optional recipient name and a corresponding input, subject, input, message, and a text area for inputting the message, and a send button. Still hoping that my email server is working. Not yet. All right. Only slightly embarrassing. So anyway, that's all that little check does. It says, hey, if there's information in the to, if it's not blank, go ahead and do the logic. Go ahead and send this email out. But if the to is blank, go down here and show them the web page so that they can put information into that too. Not really scary in my mind. So, what we've got here is just a page that's going to bring people to your website can encourage them to keep it as their home page, putting links on that they would like, ask them. You could track what links they click on if you wanted to. This whole page for changing the cascading style sheet that creates the look for the web page. You could just as easily have this thing default. Oh no, that's style. Instead of inserting information into the SQL query to change what their color scheme is, you could instead have another thing that says last clicked on or something like that, or even clicked on and date. You could have a long text entry if you wanted to, and keep appending onto the end of a column, and you could track every single site that they clicked on your website just by having it register the link and then move on to wherever they really wanted to go. They never see this. They don't realize they're getting redirected through a web page every time they click on a link on your website. But you could do that if you wanted to. It's the same basic information. All you're doing is connecting to a database, pulling information out, or putting information in. Let's see here.
Question for you.
Sure.
You were talking before about the fact that you can pull the standard stuff that Microsoft or the browser gives out there, and you're pulling the username information. Is there a way to find out what all those fields are that they're pushing out there?
Actually, yes, there is. What I can actually do is go in here. I believe it is server. Do a quick cheat here. If you want a good place to learn things like ASP, this is a great site, w3schools.com. I like it because it's really, really childish in its presentation. I need that sometimes. Sometimes I have a background as a programmer. So a lot of the stuff, when I say it's painless and not scary, it's because I don't find this stuff painful and scary. But in reality, even I need to go sometimes just have a dumb question answered, and this is the best place to get dumb questions answered as well as complex things. But there is actually, I think it's under the ASP stuff. What did I just call this? This was cert request. It's under the request object. Request form server variables. I think if I do the whole collection, if I just do request server variables, it'll show the whole thing. Let me try this real quick here. Maybe we can quickly see without too much ugliness. What? This little symbol right here delineates where code is in the web page. When your web server opens up a web page to check to see if it's good to send out to a user who's asked for it, if you have ASP enabled on your IIS web server, which it is by default, it looks through the web page of any page that has .asp as the ending of the page, looks through it for these little tags, and anything inside the tags it processes. Anything not inside the tags, it doesn't. I took this out inside the tag so that it wouldn't redirect us to the main web page, because I want it to stay here for a second while I ask it to show us response. I am having trouble typing now. Response write to the user, right, as a response to their request, write to them the request server variables, and let's just see what happens if I go to my style web page. Operation. Yeah, operation not allowed. Why is operation not allowed? Server variables. Response, right. Request server variables. Request collection. And of course, try. Operation not allowed. What if I take all this stuff out of the processing? It'll look ugly on the screen, but that doesn't matter. Response right. Oh, I see what I did. Goober. Sometimes I just don't get it. Alright, well, I'm going to cheat. Actually, I think it's privacy.net. They have a thing that shows you all the server variables. Let's analyze. Yeah. This is... Privacy.net can tell you all the different things that you've got, because what they're actually trying to tell you how dangerous it is for you to be browsing around the web, because this is all the information you're giving away. The system attempted to put the following cookies on your system. You can tell what cookies there are, the browser type and the operating system, all the different, all the information sent by your browser when requesting this web page, except all these types of images, except this kind of language, connection keep alive, the host, the refer, again, the information we saw before. It tells that your JavaScript is working, the kind of machine I have, the CPU type, all this stuff. It's a very long collection of how to access each one of these is like, well, for example, the one I was using was logon_name. You know, any ASP book, the simple, like in the simple section before you get to all the complex stuff will have it, or the appendix. There'll be appendix. All the server variables access this one. You were going to ask a question.
I was going to say, could you use that to troubleshoot the page that couldn't get through?
Yes, you can. You can. Although I prefer to do stuff like actually checking the network connection with tools like Sam Spade or doing a trace route or something like that. But you can, yeah, you sure you could. Yeah, Java's working everything. Oh well. Anywho, this is really, really primitive. I understand that it could be for someone who's never coded before still a little scary. But we're talking about cutting and pasting chunks of code. I mean, once you have the ability to connect to a database, you can put it in any page that needs to have access to a database. I want to show you real quick one last thing. An application that I did do on Pepperdine's website, Pepperdine Law School's website. We have this. Career Services is absolutely just in love with this thing. I don't know why they're so excited about it, but they love it. Waiting for it to come up here. Career Services. They call it Career Perspectives. It's a job list. Only people who have the password can get in. The password is very, very secret. Don't tell anyone that, if you want to get a job, that maybe use a password to get jobs. I don't know. Anyway, all it is a web page that pulls up a long list of jobs. The code for the job list Here's the job list code. job list is terribly frightening. It checks to see if there's a user password. Oh, there. Well, you didn't see that password. Job. It checks to see if someone has entered a password. If they haven't, or if they entered it wrong, it puts up this little form that asks them for a password. Else, we get the big long web page, and all the big long web page is, hey, we connect to that network. This looks familiar to us, and we select all these kinds of things. I have a pretty complicated table. It has like the name of the people who submitted the job and the day they submitted the job and whether or not it's been authorized by career services and all that hoopla. We do a query, and then we start pumping out HTML. If you are thinking about changing your job, please give us a call, blah, blah, blah. And we have while not the end of the record set, spit out a job listing. Date posted, job number, job title, job description, name, email, address, URL, phone, and all the respective names inside the database. Object, record set, move next, wind. Wind takes you back up to the while. And it just keeps going through this over and over and over again until it's gone through every job in the database. And then down here it closes the database. Okay, that's pretty cool. But how does someone get a job in to the database? There's a web page conveniently called job post. And all this does is take in information in a form, and like a lot of other of these pages I've been showing you, job post checks to see if there's a job title, and if the job title is blank, isn't blank, excuse me, if there's anything in the job title, I hate saying that, it's so awkward. If there isn't anything in the job title, or is something in the job title, it puts a connection to the database and inserts all the information from the form into the database. Otherwise, it gives you the form. If you haven't pushed the submit button, it wants to give you the form so that you can hit submit. So it can run this code up here to stick it into the database. Not scary. If we go to Job Juggler, the Career Services wanted to be able to have, actually I think it's just called Juggler, Career Services wanted to be able to have the power to make sure that only jobs they wanted to be posted got posted. I think this is another terribly secret password. Ooh, helps him. Oh, come on. Oh, I went to the wrong one. There we go. Temporary password. Oh, CSE. You didn't see that. All right, what this does is this looks for just jobs that haven't been authorized in the database, sticks that information into another loop that's going through each one and displaying the information preloaded in a table so that someone could edit, come in here and say, oh man, the Director of Business and Legal Affairs has misspelled and put legally affairs. Oops, they did that. Well, I'm glad that I was looking on that before I put it up on my website. And the person who sits at the desk there at the Career Service Center can go in here and just edit that just to make sure it's okay. If some crazy student is just trying to spam the list, well, they can just delete the entry entirely, or they can authorize it. If they authorize it, it goes into the big list. Delete it, take it out of the database, edit it and authorize, it goes in as edited. Now, what do when you're done with all that and you want to, when you're done with these evil job listings, I also have a list juggler. Again, that terribly secret password. Please don't do this on your own website. Have the good sense God gave you to do this better than I did. And don't put the passwords on the web pages themselves. All this is a list of every single job with forms for each one that give them the ability to edit the entries or delete them, so that after they've been up there forever, we can get rid of them. Or we can fix them if they want to update the information. If these Federal Labor Regulation Authority people call up and say, oh, I'm sorry, we actually need them to have this sort of experience, instead of that sort of experience, could you change it? They can do it. And all this is just loops of code, doing the same thing I showed you over and over again. Getting access to a database, reading that into the default information in the form, and then when the form is submitted, pushing that information to the database.
Now, deleting it deletes it, and it doesn't delete something.
Yes, it does. There are 4 commands. There's select in transact SQL. Select selects information, reads it. Insert inserts a new record. Update updates an existing record, and delete deletes it. That's 4 commands, 7 pages worth of information in any SQL book. Anyone can learn this stuff. This is not Perl. This is not anything weird. Very simple, basic stuff. If you've got undergrads, I don't know how many of you have standalone law schools and how many have central universities, but if you've got undergrad computer science major, man, they can crank out pages and pages of this stuff in a few days.
You're running Windows 2000 right now.
I'm running Windows 2000, but all these features are available in IIS 4.0 except the web folders. The web folders feature where you're able to access from your home, over the web, basically, all the information in your home directory, just like as if it was on your local machine. You do have to have IIS 5.0 and Internet Explorer 5.0 each.
But you don't need, we're running NT.
You can run everything but the web folders on NT. Now, it's possible that Microsoft has something out there for NT, but I just can't. I can't believe it. I think that it's too.
It could be done, but it would be a long way.
Well, I think if you do it on the problem with 4.0 IIS 4.0 is it didn't like attaching to shares on another computer. If the home directory for your users is not on your web server, IIS 4.0 just absolutely bombs trying to get to it. It likes to have everything locally stored on its own hard drive, or you're just not going to be able to get to it. Now, maybe there's a tweak out there to allow you to do that, but that's the only thing really standing in your way is being able to connect from your web server, just like in the Novell problem, connect from your web server to wherever that home directory is. You've got to find some way to get to that place, and it just so happens that IIS 5 has no problem going to any machine on your domain. It'll go and grab the files. It'll use the permissions you gave it when you authenticated to access that information instead of using a default web server account.
So there's all information that you can profile in the database, read it all.
It can read all that. It can read the Active Directory, where your home directory is, or the regular, like NT, if you're still using NT domain structure, it can read that too. So it just knows where the home directory is.
Can the web folders also use other folders?
Well, in fact, you could. If you look back here, if I show you real quick, that in this defaults, notice I use one of my little jiggies here to get the username, dserver username, and when I actually click on the web page, get my files, you'll see it takes me to a fake web address of my name. In this case, administrator. But I could have this be anything administrator had access to in theory. It just defaults to your home directory. Make sense? Any other questions?
One thing that we're trying to do is set up an ASP-driven calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if of any good places to find maybe pre-written code for that, or?
There are a lot of sites that have free ASP. I have some free ASP. I wouldn't mind any of this stuff. It's just cut and paste is most of this stuff. Just cut and paste. That I wouldn't mind sending to you. The biggest thing with calendars is just making them look pretty. I mean, it is like no trouble at all to have a list of dates and events in a database. That makes sense. To store things, very easy to do. But the question is, how do you make it come out like a pretty little calendar table? You know, probably the number one site for ASP in my book, as far as getting free ASP, is called 4 Guys from Rolla. And the 4 is the number 4. 4guysfromrolla.com. And they have links to other good sites. The only problem with most of the cool ASP sites out there right now, just even like 4 Guys from Rolla, is that, well, I'll show you. Here. www.4guysfromrolla, I think ROOLA. Yeah. 4 Guys from Rolla. They have literally, you know, textbooks full of free code. You want to have a user discussion list, here you go. You want to connect to a database, here you go. You want to put this kind of information, the time, the date, the whatever, this, that. You want to change style sheets, this is how you do it. Ridiculous amount of stuff, really well organized if you just follow the resources over here. The best thing is like, where's down here? Where is it? The best part of their whole website was just their introductory material. They're in the middle of changing their website. A lot of these guys, that's what I was going to say, a lot of these guys have a problem. 4 Guys ASP fact. The problem with all these guys is they're converting to ASP.NET for the new Microsoft.NET platform, Windows XP, all these things that Microsoft's about to put out with, like, you store all your information on Microsoft server using their Passport services and all this hoopla, the Hailstorm maybe you've heard of. I don't know. There's all this stuff Microsoft's about to do that scares some people to death, just like everything else they do. But the in anticipation, almost all these websites have started to cover .NET stuff and leave off ASP.3.0, 3.0 or 2.0 stuff. It's becoming harder and harder to get very good information. But here, if you go to the frequently asked questions, using cookies, text file, how to read a text file using ASP, how to rotate a banner, are session variables evil? Well, you don't need to worry about that. Here's the beginner stuff. What exactly are active server pages? Active server page side languages, because you don't have to use, you could use Perl in an active server web page. I don't know why you do that, but you could. The response object, variables in ASP, functions in ASP, using indexes. Why ASP? I mean, you can read through this stuff. It'd take you like a half day, and you can become just as good as someone who's programming all the time. Because they give you code samples. You go, oh, I want to connect to a database. Put in my database name, put in my database server. There we go. I connect now. They have links to other good ones like ASP 101, ASP Fax, ASP Message Board, ASP Wire, Swink, and XML. 15 seconds is okay, I guess. Anyway, you can spend a couple days browsing around, or send one of your student workers off to browse around and say, hey, look, I need you to write some ASP, write some variable pages on my website. Can you go learn some stuff? Could you just go spend some time and tell me what you learned? Come back with a bunch of code. Thank you. You know, what are you paying this guy? $7 an hour. You can have him spend an afternoon on this. It's worth it. So this is really the best site, though. Lots of free code. They have a discussion board, a message board. I generally get answer if I post a question up there. Somebody answers it usually within a couple of hours. You know, and it's free. I mean, and that's the thing. You know, this is free to everyone using Microsoft stuff. It's already all built in. Might as well use it. If you have any other questions, why don't you ask me? Just come up here and we'll talk about some more. Hopefully this wasn't too crazy, but just wanted to show you guys how to use some of the stuff if you wanted to. Thank you.